Hey, Carly.
Hey Wade, today we are going to talk about the critical process of EDA.
What's EDA?
So, EDA actually stands for Exploratory Data
Okay,
Analysis.
this is the single most important thing about data science I think we're going to cover in the entire series.
I completely agree. So, exploratory data analysis is a technique that data scientists use when they first get a data set to kind of dive into it and see what exactly they're working with. And it involves a lot of things. We're going to talk about a couple different things that it involves, but a lot of times I've heard people say that the EDA process can be over 50% of your time when analyzing data, especially if you have a really messy data set.
Yeah, so EDA, from a computer science point of view, is going to be the process of getting your data, and once you have the data, seeing what's inside of the data, and seeing what we need to clean up, and then potentially making some initial visualizations to get an understanding of what this data looks like.
Exactly. And the goal is to get familiar with your data, discover patterns, see if there are any outliers. And in statistics, sometimes we use this to check assumptions. Sometimes some statistical analysis that we do requires certain assumptions to be met.
So throughout this series, we're going to dive into different ways of doing EDA, and I'm going to focus on using Python to actually help us explore the data set when we're not sure what the data set contains.
Exactly. And with EDA, the thing is, there's not really an exact recipe that I can give you that says, do this every single time you get a data set. And this EDA will definitely fit for whatever you're doing. But we're going to talk about a couple different things that are super common that are a part of exploratory data analysis.
What are those things?
Yeah, so I'll start with the first one. So the first one is actually data cleaning. So oftentimes data sets that we get can be very messy. Especially I remember back when I worked in industry, I remember I got a data set that had a bunch of missing data. It had a couple columns that were exactly the same, so I wouldn't need both of them. And then the column headings weren't very clear. So a part of data cleaning can be checking for missing values, making sure that your columns are all named correctly, and making sure that you don't have any duplicates that you wouldn't necessarily need.
And this part of data cleaning, the part of EDA, is honestly one of the most time-consuming parts of all of the work that I do. That a lot of what I do is find a bunch of data that I want to explore and nerd out with, and as part of that, the data is almost always messy and almost always not ready to be analyzed. So we're going to often do a lot of the data cleaning for you in the series, so that you can really work with the data. But know that as you work with real data and find your own data sets, that cleaning up the data to put in this well-structured CSV file is often a lot of work and something that you're going to get better and better at the more you do data science.
Exactly. And we can use a lot of different tools and functions in Python to specifically help with data cleaning.
So what else is part of EDA?
Let's see. So, the next thing I would say that's super common is looking at data types. What types of data are you working with? So, wait, I think you can do this pretty easily in Python, right?
Yeah, so when we think about data, we think about data being either a string, which is going to be things that have words. And in Python, these are things we put quotes around. Or we can think of data being numbers. And we can think of numbers as both whole numbers, or what we call integers, or decimal numbers, what we might call doubles or floats. So those are going to be the kind of three big types of data that we're going to look at. Being, is it a string? Is it a number? And if it is a number, is it a whole number, an integer, or is it a decimal number like a float?
Exactly. And it's good to know that at the beginning of your data analysis because, for example, you can't perform numeric operations on strings. So, knowing what types of data you're dealing with is great. And I think there's actually a function in Python that can look at this right away, right?
Yeah, we're going to dive into finding out what the data types of each column or each variable is as we look at some Python code.
Perfect. A couple other things that usually are involved in data analysis are, I'm going to say, descriptive statistics. So finding basic statistics of columns such as the mean, median, mode, measures of spread like standard deviation. And this can kind of give us an idea of what the values are in our data set. Another super common one is actually basic data visualization. And Wade, this is your specialty.
Yeah, data visualization is really the way we communicate data to large audiences. And there's a ton of work you can do in data visualization, and we're just going to touch the surface of some basic data visualization as part of this series.
Okay. Yeah, and in terms of visualization, we're going to be able to look at things like bar charts, histograms, scatter plots, box plots, and we're going to talk a lot about each of those in this series. So these are just a couple different ways that you can start exploring your data right when you get a data set. Wade, is there anything else you want to add to the list, or is this good?
This really looks like a complete summary of what it means to do some exploratory data analysis, and I can't wait to get started with some data.
Yeah, that sounds great. We'll see you soon.